Welcome. We'll give everyone a moment to join and then we'll get started here. All right. So thank you all for joining us today for our webinar where we will discuss rethinking your cybersecurity ROI before a breach occurs. With ransomware attacks on the rise, it is important for healthcare organizations to understand how to frame cybersecurity ROI and how to make those investments pay off in security, compliance, and branding. We'll also discuss tools and techniques that streamline your security, mitigate risk, and help prevent breaches, including Darktrace's ransomware defense and detection and response solutions. Let me tell you a little bit about our host organizations. Darktrace was founded by mathematicians in 2013, and they are headquartered in Cambridge, UK. Darktrace is a British-American AI company that specializes in cyber defense. They were the first to the market with artificial intelligence for comprehensive cyber defense, as well as being the creators of cyber AI and autonomous response technology. RSI Security is a premier managed IT security and compliance advisory service provider. We have professionals for all cybersecurity and compliance needs, from data privacy to PCI, healthcare data compliance, cyber defense, penetration testing, federal programs, and more. These are some of the services we specialize in as a full suite cybersecurity solution provider. We work with some of the world's leading companies, institutions, and governments to ensure the safety of their information and their compliance with applicable regulations. Now I will introduce our panelists. So Justin is one of the US's leading cyber intelligence experts and holds the position of Director of Cyber Intelligence and Analytics at Darktrace. His insights on cybersecurity and artificial intelligence have been widely reported in leading media outlets, including the Wall Street Journal, CNN, the Washington Post, and Viceland. With over 10 years of experience in cyber defense, Justin has supported various elements of the US intelligence community, holding mission-critical security roles with Lockheed Martin and more. Justin is also a highly skilled technical specialist and works with Darktrace's strategic global customers on threat analysis, defensive cyber operations, protecting IoT, and machine learning. Mohan Shamachar is the Director of Information Security and Compliance at RSI Security and has 15 years of experience in information technology infrastructure, management, and cybersecurity. Mohan is an expert advisor in data privacy frameworks, including GDPR and CCPA. Mohan is also both an authorized high-trust CSF assessor and a PCI DSS qualified security assessor. Before I pass it off to Mohan, I'd like to go over a few FAQs. First, any questions that you have throughout the presentation, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Be sure to use the Q&A button to submit all of your questions throughout. Also, you will receive a copy of the presentation and your CPE certificate via email tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. I will now pass it over to Mohan to take away. Thank you for Justin for joining us today, and thank you for Mohan for your expert input as well. We appreciate everyone joining us today, and tomorrow we will be in touch over email and sending you this recording, the presentation, and your CPE certificate.
Thank you, Nico. All right, so I'm going to start with some news headlines. So today's topic is about investments in security and why should one make investments in security, cybersecurity. And usually at the top management level, it's still sinking in. Cybersecurity is not at the top when it comes to making business decisions, investment decisions. It's taking a while, a very, very long time, a long trajectory for the board and the senior management to realize that cybersecurity is a critical issue. So before we talk about the benefits and the return on investment, let's talk about data breaches. What's the impact? What causes it? So as you can see, a couple of headlines here. On the left side at the bottom, I have, this is a reporting portal on OCR from the Department of Health. This is real. Anyone can go here, ocrportal.hhs.gov, and you can see all the different breaches and timelines and the causes of the healthcare related breaches that occurred over a period of time. And also it shows how many individual records individuals were affected and so on. And what does this mean? Depending on how many individuals and the cause and everything, there are penalties. And on the right side, I have Fitch ratings. This is recent news, April of this year. They have partnered with Security Scorecard company. It's a cyber risk assessment company. And they are going to be exploring cyber risk and using that to rate the business entities. And they already have, the credit rating analysis includes cyber risk. So what does this mean? If you don't have the right security posture, if your company is breached, if you have too many incidents, your ratings will go down. And that has business impact. And ransomware, particularly this year, there's been more and more. 2017, with WannaCry, it all started, and then kind of, went into the background, and all of a sudden it appeared again. So recently, the Colonial Pipeline is a huge ransomware attack where the pipeline had to be shut down, and consumers did not get gas for many, many days. And as you can see, Baltimore County public schools were shut down because of ransomware attack. So in general, anytime there are data breaches, there's financial impact, reputational loss, business loss, loss of productivity, legal liabilities, and impact on continuing the business. So this is what happens when there's a data breach. Let's talk about businesses. How are they doing in terms of cyber resilience? So cyber resilience is all about how quickly you can get back if there is an attack, and how quickly you identify. So it's a holistic security posture within a business organization. And so the title here says leaders versus non-leaders. Leaders are those who have provided a good security posture, who have implemented some secure maturity in terms of cybersecurity. And then non-leaders are those who have not. So let's look at a few data points here. So number of gaps in protection. In the case of leaders, leading entities, 80% of the organization is actively protected. In the case of non-leaders, 55% of the organization is actively protected. In terms of detection, 83% of breaches found by security teams, 54% breaches found by security teams. So you see the pattern here. Whether the ability to stop the attacks, find the breaches faster, fix the breaches faster, reduce the breach impact, you can see a huge difference in terms of those who have proactively implemented cybersecurity programs and those who have not. So you can see on the right side, the cyber detection speed, how long it takes to detect an incident. The leaders who have implemented automation and solutions, the speed is, significantly quicker compared to the non-leaders. And similarly, cyber recovery restoration time, how long it takes to restore the normal activity. after an incident or a breach. And then how long it takes to identify and mobilize cyber response time. So in every category, you can see the difference between why an entity should make investment in cybersecurity in order to identify, detect, and respond to data breaches on time and keep the losses to a minimum. Let's look at what kinds of data are involved in the breach. So by the way, all my information is from Ponemon Institute and IBM Security report. They have a great report. Anybody can access it and read it. So I have extracted what's relevant for our topic today. So if you look at it, 80% of the data breaches involved customer PII. That also means healthcare records, medical records, and privacy-related data attacks. And the next is intellectual property, and then anonymized customer data and other corporate data and employee PII. So this is significant. Those who collect and use and share consumer information, make note of this. Let's talk about the threat actor motives. 53% financially motivated, 53% of the attacks. 13% by hacktivists, another 13% nation state, and another 21% unknown. So as you can see, PII and financial motivation. What does it mean? PII has dollar value. They want consumer information so that they can put it on the dark web, they can extort money, and so on. So let's look at some of the significant causes of the the data breaches. So as you can see, misconfiguration is a significant cause. 19% of the attacks are because of cloud misconfiguration. And another significant root cause is compromised credentials, shared usernames and passwords, stolen data, stolen credentials, and so on. So that's huge. The attackers come after credentials, usernames and passwords. And if companies have not implemented the right security model with multi-factor authentication and other things, they are prone to getting their credentials compromised. And then physical security compromise, 10%, phishing attacks, 14%. Here we have insider threat, malicious insider attack, that's about 7%. And social engineering, about 3%. Business email compromise, 5%. Make note of a significant 16% here because of third party, the indirect attacks. Many entities think that, okay, they got a security posture in place, they've done everything, but what they forget about is who are we sharing with? How are we integrating our vendors? Is it just, via portals? Is it API? How is the security posture among our vendors? So many companies sort of ignore in performing some due diligence there. And because of that, third-party related software and third-party related attacks, are more common. And so we talked about nation state and hacktivists and malicious attacks. So look at the cost of the breach here. This is measured in millions US dollars. Nation state, $4.43 million US dollars per attack, per data breach. And so malicious attacks are not too far behind, 4.27 million per attack. So this is the cost of a breach. let's look at the cost of the breach in terms of how many days it takes to identify and respond. Look at the top, we have healthcare industry where it takes 236 days to identify the attack, just identify 236 days. And then overall, it takes about 329 days, almost a year, to identify and respond to a data breach in the healthcare industry. So you can see the rest of the, in fact, the financial industry, if you look at the bottom, they're doing a little bit better than compared to anyone else. The banks are doing better. So this is an important factor. How quickly can you identify and respond to malicious attacks and also respond to a data breach? So here's another example where companies with fully deployed security systems and infrastructure, they take less number of days, the time in identifying and responding, 234 days. Those companies that do not invest in cybersecurity and do not put a cybersecurity posture and invest, they take longer, 308 days to identify and contain an attack. So what does this mean? More number of days, more the harm, more the losses. Look at the number of records impacted and how's the cost of breach. We look at that measured in millions here. More the number of records, more the losses. 50 million plus records involved in a data breach, that's about nearly $400 million. That's the cost of the breach. And 1 to 10 million records impacted, about $50 million, the cost of the breach. This is an interesting info here. So what is the biggest factor in reducing the overall total cost of a breach? Those companies that have implemented incident response plan and they have tested incident response plan and they have the incident response teams, they have done very well in terms of containing the total cost of a breach. And those companies who have red team testing, employee training, extensive encryption, security analytics, threat intelligence sharing, and cyber insurance, and who have deployed DevSecOps, and who perform vulnerability testing and patch management, they have all done better in terms of containing the cost. But those who have complex security systems combined with not having the solutions listed above, their cost is high, represented in red here. So you can see, okay, where do we invest? So this kind of gives a big picture of, what's critical in containing the costs and reducing the costs. So finally, looking at various factors, what's causing the breach, what does it cost, and who are the threat actors, and what can be done. So summarizing here, what can you do? What's your cybersecurity strategy so that you can prevent or minimize the impact of an attack? So number one, everything starts with a tone at the top. Invest in governance, risk management, and compliance programs, and align the security with business objectives. So it's not one hammer for all different nails. You have to understand what's critical for your business, what are critical processes, what systems, and where are your vendor integrations, and so on. So identify the critical business, what's going on, and perform a risk assessment and do a continuous risk management so that you can identify critical security gaps and work towards implementing security systems to address those gaps. Invest in security automation. What does this do? It reduces the average time to detect and respond to an incident or a data breach. And this in turn lowers the average cost of the breach. Adopt zero trust security model. So, still many entities, companies are talking about, okay, let's put a boundary. Within the boundary, trust everybody. And outside the boundary, put firewall rules. That model is not working. So develop a zero trust mindset where threats exist everywhere and you got to continuously question who has access to what and why. So by deploying a zero trust security model, you can prevent unauthorized access to sensitive data and critical systems. And as we noted earlier, incident response plan, a huge factor. Test your plans. Make sure it works. What does this do? Build cyber resilience and reduce the average total cost of a data breach. Endpoints are very critical, particularly with pandemic and companies going remote. It's even more important to protect and monitor the endpoints. And as you all know, one click on a phishing email can bring trouble. And misconfiguration can bring trouble. Sharing without authorization brings trouble. So invest in awareness and training. The one investment any company can make with the highest ROI is in the awareness and training. And that's not enough. You got to track cybersecurity progress at all times. Continuous compliance, continuous monitoring, continuous operations, cybersecurity operations, and also grow in terms of maturity, policies, procedures, and repeatable processes. There are great frameworks and models. Some of you may have heard about CMMC, NIST CSF, and CIS. They all provide you tools and frameworks and standards to build a cybersecurity maturity within an organization. So in summary, we talked about the cost of a data breach and what you can do in order to minimize the cost and be prepared to respond to attacks, and also build a cybersecurity posture that prevents the attacks. And before I pass it on to Justin, I wanted to conclude with this slide here. What is return on investment? Depends on who you ask. If you ask a CFO, for them, it's all about profitability. Capital investment on a product that contributes to profitability of an organization. So you ask a security officer, for them, it's about preventing losses and reducing losses, capital investment on risk reduction and cybersecurity that minimizes or avoids losses. So the answer to a senior management executive is invest in cybersecurity to minimize the losses and be ready to face the attacks and respond to it. Thank you. Justin?
Thank you, Mohan. Great data. Just to sum up a couple points, I think everybody would agree it's expensive to get hacked. And it is definitely a conversation that's coming up more and more as I'm meeting with Darktrace customers, is just not just return on investment from Darktrace, but return on investment across the entire stack. And I'm glad to see that conversation happening, going all the way up to the board level. So Fascinating, thing to think about. For those of you that are joining a little bit late, my name is Justin Fier, Director of Cyber Intel and Analytics. And I'm going to talk about how AI fights back against machine speed threats, specifically to the healthcare industry, but really across all industries. A lot of this could be applied. So next slide, please. And like a good nerd, I've got multiple screens, so I'm following along on my other monitor here, just in case you see me look up in the other direction. So it is a new threat landscape that we're living in. I want to start with a quote from Forrester. This new era of offensive AI leverages various forms of machine learning to supercharge cyber attacks, resulting in unpredictable, contextualized, speedier, and stealthier assaults that can cripple unprotected organizations. That is a mouthful, but I want you to focus on a couple things. Machine speed, machine learning, unpredictable, all of these things we've experienced in the last 6 to 8 months. In our industry, it has been a tumultuous time. Everything from SolarWinds to the Colonial Pipeline attack to the water treatment facility to JBS, just to list a few. And a lot of that comes from the last year and a half of our lives, the new threat landscape we live in, which really is the result of the new work environment that we've all adopted, and some of us will be adopting for the foreseeable future. The first thing and most obvious, remote working has created a whole new set of cyber attack vectors and really increased our footprint, so to speak, of our organization. I'll argue the perimeter is long gone. We don't have a perimeter anymore. A lot of us are exploring new technologies. And because of that, our environment has gotten more complex. Our networks are not getting dumber, they're getting smarter and more complex and more disparate. We're sending data to more places. We're relying on more tools to actually allow for our corporations to collaborate and work outside of the physical office space. And so our environments are becoming more complex. And with complexity becomes lack of visibility. What's been fascinating and both scary is about 3 years ago, folks first started getting a handle on the visibility in their organizations, and then the pandemic hit and we move everybody to the houses. Everybody's using mobile devices. We're using new technologies, and we've introduced new blind spots into our network. Another fun fact is 86% of industry professionals believe that AI-powered attacks are going to become mainstream. And guess what, folks? They already are. The attackers are already using natural language processing and other various machine learning approaches to mine data sets, craft better spear phishing emails to get you to click on it, etc. What a lot of industry professionals, myself included, think is that eventually malware is going to have some aspects of AI within it, making decisions as it permeates a network, making decisions based off environment variables around it before it actually takes its next step. And we've already started to see some of this in some of the more polymorphic strains of malware. Once again, unless you've been living under a rock, nation state attacks have certainly increased, or at least it appears they have. As a former Intel officer myself, I can tell you a lot of this has been happening behind the scenes for decades. Now we're starting to see more of it because these cyber attacks, whether nation state or criminal organization, affect us, the end users. And it's no longer just a classified covert operation that happened behind the scenes that you were not aware of. And then last but not least, targeted impersonation attacks and phishing emails. We'll talk about some real world cases we've seen, but we've seen everything come down from CEOs of corporations to deep fake videos being spread internally, from senior leadership. Next slide, please. So that takes me to self-learning AI. This is the core of what Darktrace does, and it's really what put us on the map. Now, I have been lucky to be with Darktrace since the early days of being a startup to now a publicly traded company on the London Stock Exchange. So I've gotten to see where our machine learning and our AI approach has really grown. And so what does it mean to be a self-learning artificial intelligence? Well, first and foremost, we modeled this very technology after the human immune system. And think about what your human immune system does in its simplest form. It watches over my body and it notifies me in various physiological ways that something unusual has happened. One of my levels is not normal. Something in my pattern of life has changed. And that's exactly what the Darktrace self-learning AI system does. It can deploy in your entire digital estate and establish a sense of self, both at a micro level for the individual users and a macro level for the entire network. It's entirely self-learning, meaning we don't have any rules or fixed baselines. And it's actually quite simple why we took this approach. Unless you're aware, and love for you to share it with me, there's no labeled training data set for every network around the world. Sure, we're all using the same protocols and same technologies and have similar setups, but at the end of the day, every one of our networks is like an organic living organism, and it has a fingerprint. It has a digital DNA explicit to itself. So we had to go with something that would self-learn and have no predefined sense of what's good or bad or unusual and usual. And as I already mentioned in the last slide, it's got to detect undetectable, unpredictable. Threats that are coming out today are 9 out of 10 times things we've never seen before, or something that may have been seen before, but's been changed. And so historical data sets, they're just not enough in today's day and age. I'm not saying to get rid of them completely. There is a place in our industry, but it is simply not enough to rely on. And it is definitely not enough to help prepare and prevent that next version of WannaCry or whatever is coming out next. I already alluded to this earlier, but our networks have gotten more complex. We're using dozens of SaaS and cloud services. We've got folks coming from working from home, folks now back in the office. So we need 100% visibility of every user across my entire digital estate. And that doesn't just include the network traffic. That's email, cloud, SaaS, IoT, OT. It's everything that is touching my physical and non-physical network fabric. And then, which should be a no-brainer, it's got to be scalable. We're adding devices to our networks on a daily basis, and most organizations are growing, especially as the economy starts to turn back around and organizations are reinvesting. We have to be able to scale. So I want to leave you with another little quote from Tom Johnson, the CIO of Penn Highlands Healthcare. And he said, "I sleep a lot better at night knowing that I have AI protecting our organization and patient information." I want you to focus on that last piece, patient information. I am married to a healthcare professional, so I know how important it is for healthcare industry to protect that PII and that healthcare information. And that could not be any more the case across every one of our healthcare clients. Next slide, please. So we've talked about what it means to be self-learning. What does it actually look like in practice? This is the Darktrace immune system, the self-learning AI platform, so to speak. And at the top of the screen, you've got 3 major components: the enterprise immune system, which is that detection piece; Cyber AI Analyst, which is the automated investigation piece. That is an AI version of myself. And then autonomous response, Antigena. So let's start at the left. That enterprise immune system is what put us on the map. And that is that self-learning detection. That is the ability to go into your email, your SaaS, your cloud, your network, and learn what's normal. Establish that sense of self. Track all the communications, whether it's east and west and north and south, peer analysis, and establish baselines for every user and device on the network. And what happened naturally for us is we got so good at detecting the unusual, showing our customers all the strange things that were happening in their environment that they were completely unaware of, that naturally they came back to us and said, as you're aware, there's a shortage in practitioners in our industry, and we just don't have enough people to actually combat this. So years ago, we came out with what is called Antigena, that piece at the far right. And so we realized that it's not enough to just detect and show corporations that there is unusual and potentially bad stuff happening. We need to save them some time. We need to buy them back time. And so that's what autonomous response is. That is an AI-driven response engine. Now, it is passive. It's not sitting in line. There's no proxy server. It is not as destructive as the IPS of yesteryear, but think of it as a highly surgical, highly precise reaction taken out by the system. And that could be dozens of different actions, whether it's sending TCP resets or sending real-time ACLs or firewall rules, or even killing virtual assets. We can take an action essentially across every one of those telemetry points that you see at the bottom. And the important thing to note here, as I mentioned, it's surgical, it's measured, it's precise. 9 out of 10 times, the end user doesn't even realize we took action against them. So for instance, if your machine is infected with malware or ransomware, for instance, you might still be able to check your email, surf the web, as we're only going to take an action or a series of actions against the unusual conversation. And that's the ransomware piece to this. Now, you can take more drastic actions like cut the user off completely from the network and isolate that system. But we want to use that as a last ditch response. And the other thing to think about here is we're saving teams time. Instead of having to go out and first figure out that we've already been compromised, half of our systems are offline, we're catching it literally within the first few minutes of the attack. We're looking at the precursors to the major part of the attack, and we're putting an action around that. We're stopping most ransomware in under a minute at this point today. And then the last piece of this puzzle is the cyber AI analyst. That's the automated investigation. Now, you heard me say, what we've all been thinking, and we already know, there's not enough of us to go around. There's not enough analysts to hire and actually work in our SOCs. So what we did is we watched our own SOC. We've got 100+ analysts around the globe. Some of them have 15+ years of experience like myself, and some of them are new, fresh out of university. And we watched them for 3.5 years. And we're still watching them today, collecting data. Like any good machine learning project, you need a lot of data. And once we had that data, unlike the self-learning enterprise immune system and Antigena, we utilized supervised machine learning in conjunction with unsupervised and deep learning to train what we call the cyber AI analyst. Now, this is a system that's running 7 days a week on all of our clients, 24 hours a day, and it's looking at all of the model breaches, and it's actually connecting the dots. It has the ability to say, I believe the activity that happened on a Monday is mathematically related to the activity on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And in addition to connecting those dots for you, it's going to break down each of those points, write a nice little summary for you to understand, translatable in a couple dozen different languages. And then it's going to actually ask the very questions that a human you would hope would be asking on your system. And so the very questions I would be asking, the cyber AI analyst asks and then goes out and finds the answers. There is a great blog post on our website about how the cyber AI analyst actually caught APT41, which is China, allegedly, on 2 different clients in the same industry vertical. And the thing to remember when you're reading that is there was no human intervention whatsoever. The entire system was detected, triaged, and responded with little to no human effort. The only thing the humans had to do in that particular case was wake up in the morning, print out the report, brief senior leadership, and get started on their after action plan. The last thing I would bring to your attention is down at the bottom. This entire immune system approach has the ability to cover your entire digital estate. And I know I've said that a couple times already today. That includes your email, your SaaS, your cloud, your network, your OT for those of you that are in manufacturing, and then IoT, of course. There's not a part of the network we, for the most part, cannot bring in telemetry data for, and 9 out of 10 of them we can do some form of response within as well. So it's not enough in today's day and age to say that you have visibility into any part of your network. We want to give you paramount visibility into every aspect of your network and show you and bubble up the strange things that are happening. Next slide, please. So here's a little case study, of some things that we've found in our, throughout our customers. We call this Fearware, no relationship to me, Justin Fier. But what we found is a trend, and so the industry for this is all. We saw this pretty much across our entire user base very early on when the pandemic hit and really continuing on. And that was simply utilizing the pandemic as a fearware method, a means to, capitalize off of the anxiety we as a society are already feeling to get you to click on that link or open that attachment. And so what we saw was a number, dozens of spear phishing campaigns with the sole purpose of harvesting O365 credentials. Now, I don't know what the number is at today, but I do remember early on, there was something like over 100,000 domain names registered to COVID-themed domains that were linked to likely, malware-like spear phishing attacks. And once again, they usually come in the form of rare hidden links. And we have the ability of detecting all of this within our email system. So you can see here, this is a screenshot of an actual case that we detected. And you can look, we're looking at a couple different things. The unusual or rarity of the hidden links within those emails. The sender history. Has the sender ever sent things internally to our environment, or is this a completely new sender? And if so, why are they hitting so many peers in our environment? That is strange. The unusual proximity of the domain to the employees. I mentioned before, we do peer analysis, and that includes in your emails. How many folks are just relying on their gateway where they watch an email come through the front door, go through a checklist, and go on to its sender? Well, we're actually looking at east-west traffic within your email environment as well, and doing peer analysis. Has Mohan been sending emails to other folks within his organization that he'd never sent to before? Are folks communicating in a way that they've never communicated with before, which could allude to potential malicious activity happening within the environment? Next slide, please. Here's another COVID-19 Fearware attack. In this particular case, medical technology facility. Let me just pull up some additional notes that I have available to me. And so the case for this one was to exfiltrate data. Now, just as I said before, same con op, came in through email, likely user clicked a link. And what Darktrace detected, and I'll show you on another screen, the actual AI analyst finding was that the device was making rare external connections to multiple rare external IP addresses that were 100% rare for the entire network and for the specific individual user. Additionally, we call this a low and slow attack. The individual connections, while they were less than 1 megabit of data at a time, the accumulating amount over time was rather significant. And so we call it low and slow because they do this. They try to leak out or dribble out small amounts of data to lots of different destinations to thwart more legacy technologies. And we have the ability to mathematically correlate this for you. So let's look at what this looks like from the AI analyst perspective. Next slide, please. And this is the actual AI analyst finding for you. I'm just going to pull it up on my screen so I can see it a little bit larger. And so you can see here, moving from the top to the bottom, that first piece, that timeline. Think about it from all of you that are listening today that have worked in an analytical role at some point in your life. How much time does it take just to establish the timeline of events? And in many cases, we as human beings might not even be able to. We might not have the compute power to determine that something that happened on Tuesday is actually related to something happening on Wednesday. And so you can see here the AI analyst puts it in a nice human readable format. This is an actual screenshot from an AI analyst finding. And then you'll notice the 3 tabs below. And that's because there's 3 components to this event: the unusual repeated connections, the unusual external data transfer, and the unusual internal download followed by an external upload. Now, as I mentioned before, each one of these tabs is going to present a different type of data to you, just as a human being would be taking notes. So the first thing you have is a nice, short, easy to digest summary. We did a lot of research in this. We found that if we put too much data in there, you're not going to read it. And if we put too little data in there, you're going to come back asking for more questions. So we tried to find that sweet spot, that point where you can just read it within under a minute and make a decision. Do I think that this reaches the level of requiring human actual time to investigate? The next you'll notice over on the right is that question and answer piece. Those are the questions I would hope your human analysts are asking. And so the AI analyst has gone out, asked those questions, and found the answers. And remember, I said it was a low and slow attack. Look at the amount of data that was uploaded over a period of time, almost 2 days. 18.69 gigs of data uploaded with those small little connections to lots of different destinations. And then last but not least, you can go deeper with all of the different pieces of information like the JA3 client hash, the protocol scene, the connection count, etc. All of the data that you as an analyst would be hunting for, collecting notes on, wasting valuable time, while someone is potentially wreaking havoc within your environment. Next slide, please. So the last thing I will leave you with, and then we will move on to some Q&A, is there is a wealth of information on the Darktrace website. I myself contribute a number of different blog posts. A new one just got dropped today, as well as YouTube and LinkedIn. So please come find me, come find all of us at Darktrace and all my colleagues, and check out some of the amazing data sheets and case studies that we've put out talking about a whole range of topics. Last but not least, if you just want to nerd out about cybersecurity, whether it's Darktrace or not related, please come find me on LinkedIn, drop me a little note, and more than happy to chat about you with what I'm seeing in the environment or just talk about all things nerd related. Next slide, please. And with that, I will pass the mic back and we'll do some Q&A. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Justin. That was a great presentation on how Darktrace supports the automation that's required by the businesses in order to identify, detect, and respond with great security posture and also minimize the losses. So yes, as Justin said, questions and answers. Let's see. We got a question here about whether the points under the cybersecurity strategy recommendations, was it in order or in random? So it's sort of in order. I would probably put the training and awareness a little bit above. So other than that, in general, yes, kind of top to bottom, the corporate involvement, the senior management involvement, governance, followed by risk management, and followed by risk assessment, automation, and so on.
All right, if there are no more questions, then thank you so much to our presenters and thank you to our partners at Darktrace for joining us today. We will be in touch with everyone tomorrow via email.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.